So I sort of recently replayed and got all the achievements in Metro 2033 and Last Light Redux. I haven't played Exodus yet, but I will once I take a break from the series for a bit so I don't get burned out on it. 100%ing these games makes 3 times that I've beaten each of these games, because I played them on Xbox One back in high school, and I had to play each one twice on PC to get both endings for each game. The endings you get are tied to moral choices you make in the game, as well as how much you explore, and just generally how much you engage with the game and stuff. I think it's pretty good for the most part, and it's not so convoluted and unforgiving that it's hard to get the good endings. I want to talk about the morality system and the endings for each game, because I have things to say. In Metro 2033, the bad ending is going through with the plan of launching missiles at the Dark Ones and wiping them out, only for Artyom to realize afterwards what a huge mistake he made. You're kind of meant to get the bad ending because it's based on a misunderstanding of who the Dark Ones are and what they want. I think both endings are fitting and feel in character for Artyom. A good thing to keep in mind is that Artyom is only 19 in Metro 2033. So he's young and impressionable, and the whole reason he even begins his journey in the first place is to keep his promise to Hunter, and killing the Dark Ones ends up sort of being part of the promise. Also, because Artyom is only 19, it's easy to imagine him being very enamored with Miller and the other Polis Rangers, and wanting to be like them and impress them by completing the mission and ignoring the Dark Ones trying to communicate with him at the end. And canonically, that's what happens. That's what happens in the book, and it's the ending that leads into Metro Last Light. The good ending is great in a sort of meta way, I think. Like, if you're doing this on your second playthrough, you can imagine it as Artyom running through all the events over in his head and thinking about what he could have done, wishing he had disrupted the target designator when he had the chance. As an ending to what Artyom actually does, I think it also makes sense, especially since you have to earn it by being a good person and playing the game thoughtfully. Artyom grows and learns, he spares his enemies and listens to what Khan tells him about making judgments too hastily. He quickly learns about war, from what he sees between the Reich and the Red Line, that it's a cycle of violence he can choose not to continue. In Metro Last Light, the good ending is the canonical one you're supposed to get. The game trusts you to learn from the ending of the last game and try to make up for your mistakes, but also tests you more. You have to spare people who betray you, you have to refrain from being an action hero shooty guy, even towards the mutants on the surface sometimes. Also, before I go any further, I really want to talk about Pavel because I think he's an interesting facet of the moral choices in Metro Last Light, and I think he's a great character. You meet Pavel in a Nazi concentration camp, and he helps you escape and then promises to get you back to Polis since the Red Station is on the way there. He's very upfront about being from the Red Line and how loyal he is to them. He's kind of silly and charismatic. Playing Last Light after 2033, you might subconsciously recognize how he plays a similar role to Bourbon from Metro 2033 because he shows up early on in the game and guides you through a few levels. This might help you trust Pavel, but I think the biggest reason is just because he's so upfront about being a Red. He also just seems too silly to seem like he has ulterior motives. When he does betray you, you feel like you should have seen it coming from a mile away, but it's still really annoying. When he continues to act friendly, it's infuriating because you know he's just trying to get you to cooperate with him. When you encounter him again towards the end of the game, it's accompanied by a difficult combat sequence with snipers and vantage points, and almost no cover for you to hide behind. It's designed to make you hate Pavel more, to make you want to kill him. And who would blame you after everything he's done? But the Dark One is with you. And who would blame him if he killed you for what you did to him? Surely what you did was worse. The Dark One is also a really important part of the morality system in Last Light. Once he accompanies you, you're trying to be a good example. He knows you killed his family, but he is giving you a chance and you can't mess it up. You have to be thoughtful the way he is. I remember during my good playthrough, my gamer brain got the better of me, and I wanted to see how many shots it would take with a heavy sniper rifle to kill that one demon on the roof in the Dead City level. And when I did, the Dark One pointed out how unnecessary it was. Like in real life, you couldn't pay me any amount of money to kill an animal for any reason. My own real-life morality was being reflected in the game, and it made me feel really bad. If you're a good little Artyom and learn from your mistakes, you will survive the ending of the game, thanks to the Dark Ones. If not, they abandon you and you die in the explosion, destroying D6. Fun fact, I didn't even know that there were more endings when I first played the game because I played Last Light first and had no context for the story. So when they announced Metro Exodus, I was like, blah, they're gonna ruin Metro games by making the series too long. He's supposed to be dead. They can't make a sequel. This was something I talked about in my video when I was going on about Dishonored, but I want to talk about how I think the playstyles fit Artyom's character. Both endings for 2033 and Last Light make sense on their own, but what about what you actually have to do to get them? So for Metro 2033, I think the good playthrough makes sense. Artyom has never killed anyone before the game starts, so it makes sense that he'd want to avoid this as much as possible. As far as exploring and doing good deeds, yeah, that feels in character too for someone who wants to see themselves as a hero. That's sort of the same reasoning for both playstyles, really. That Artyom wants to be a hero. I forget if this is a thing in the games, but in the book, Artyom really likes to read and reads whatever he can get his hands on. The Metro books also have some references to Greek mythology, and Artyom sort of loosely does the hero's journey thing. This is why a bad playthrough of Metro 2033 makes sense to me as well, because Artyom is sort of immediately seeing himself as a hero right from the beginning, believing he is just in everything he does, that the ends justify the means. Of course, this Artyom wouldn't listen to Khan or the Dark Ones. Of course, he would kill anyone in his way. He has to save the Metro. In Metro Last Light, I kind of find it hard to justify the bad playthrough. Artyom expresses his regret for killing the Dark Ones, like, multiple times in the game. And yeah, he'd probably kill more people in Last Light because he's a ranger and that's his job, but by the time he meets the Dark One and is traveling with him, I think it makes far more sense for him to sort of realize that he needs to redeem himself if he can in the eyes of the Dark One. Doing a bad playthrough seems needlessly cruel and selfish without that being reflected in the things Artyom literally says in the loading screens and journal entries. You get a little bit of ludonarrative dissonance that way, I guess. Also, I don't know, but I think the bad ending makes, like, no sense in Metro Last Light. Like, I mean, after the explosion and everything, sure, Artyom would be seen as a hero and whatever, but, like, why is Anna talking about him like he listened to the Dark Ones and was kind to him? If he, like, did, then he wouldn't have died. And furthermore, what the fuck are you talking about, Anna? You sounded like an IDF soldier when you were talking about the Dark Ones at the beginning of the game.
Head on in and look for the creature. I'm thinking that since the Dark Ones are so fond of you, it'll sense you, or smell you, or whatever the fuck they do, and come from hiding. Just try to stay in the open so I can cover you. We'll maintain radio contact. And if you have second thoughts, don't worry. I'll do it. Okay then. Good luck. That's some fine wasteland. You guys sure did a good job here.
And nobody around you gives a shit about them. Why are you suddenly changing your mind? In any case, I had a great time revisiting these games and completing them, and definitely completing all of the extra levels in Metro Last Light, and definitely not plugging in a controller and holding the left bumper and X to activate the glitch that lets you skip through the tower level. Definitely not. The tower is a very well designed and not torturous and unfun to play. But yeah, if you like game where story and atmosphere and world building, if you like those things, and also cool shooty, if you if you like, then you should play. They go on sale for very cheap when go on sale on Steam Store or console store of your choosing. Good night. Sleep well. Good night.